The streets of Manila buzzed with the constant noise of traffic, vendors shouting, and children running barefoot through puddles of rainwater. Amid the chaos stood a small boy named Miguel, clutching a worn-out microphone attached to a battered speaker. His voice rose above the city's noise, soft but full of feeling, as he sang old Filipino love songs. People stopped to listen, taxi drivers, vendors, even tired office workers on their way home. His voice carried something special, something raw that made even strangers pause. At just 12 years old, Miguel had seen more pain than most adults. His father had left when he was little, and his mother passed away 2 years ago. Since then, he had been the caretaker of his little sister, Leah, a cheerful 6-year-old with big brown eyes who often sat beside him while he sang. She collected the coins people tossed into an empty plastic cup, always flashing her toothy smile as she thanked them. Every night after singing, Miguel would buy a small meal, rice and fried fish, and share it with Leah under the roof of an old abandoned bus near the river. The rain would drip through holes in the ceiling, but they didn't mind. Miguel would hum softly until Leah fell asleep, her head resting on his shoulder. In those quiet moments, he dreamed of a better life, not for himself, but for her. He wanted her to go to school, to have clean clothes, to live without fear of hunger. Singing was his only way to earn money, but it was also the one thing that made him feel alive. One night, while performing near the Quiapo church, a tourist stopped and filmed his performance. Miguel didn't notice, he was lost in the music. The tourist smiled, moved by the boy's pure voice and heartbreaking story. Later that night, that short video was uploaded online with the caption, "Street Boy with an Angel's Voice." Miguel fell asleep that night without knowing his life was about to change forever. Within days, the video spread like wildfire. Thousands of comments poured in, people from all over the world were touched by his sincerity. "He sings with his soul," one comment read. "Someone help this kid," wrote another. Overnight, Miguel became a viral sensation. He only found out when a local reporter came searching for him. "Miguel, your video is famous," she said excitedly. "People around the world are watching you sing." Miguel couldn't believe it. He didn't even know what viral meant. All he knew was that strangers suddenly cared about his music. Donations began to arrive, and kind people offered food, clothes, and school supplies. But the biggest surprise came a week later when a man named Mr. Parker, a music producer from the United States, reached out through the reporter. Mr. Parker had seen the video and wanted to help. He offered Miguel an opportunity to fly to America and audition for America's Got Talent. Miguel's heart pounded as he heard the words. America, the land he had only seen on TV. It felt impossible. Me, on TV, in another country, he whispered. Leah jumped up, clapping her hands. "Kuya, you'll be a star," she said with excitement. Miguel laughed, tears in his eyes. The thought of leaving her scared him, but the chance to change both their lives filled him with hope. Days later, with the help of sponsors and well-wishers, Miguel held a passport for the first time in his life. He packed a small bag, including the same microphone he used on the streets, and hugged Leah tightly. "I'll make you proud," he promised. The entire neighborhood gathered to see him off, cheering for the boy who had brought light to their streets. As the airplane lifted off, Miguel pressed his face against the window, watching Manila shrink beneath him. He whispered a prayer, thanking God for the miracle. He didn't know what awaited him in America, but one thing was certain, he would sing not for fame or money, but for the promise he made to his little sister and for the hope that had carried him through every dark night. Miguel stared out of the airplane window as the clouds rolled beneath him, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. He had never been this far from home, never seen such endless skies or felt such uncertainty. When the plane landed in Los Angeles, everything felt like a dream. The air was cooler, the streets wider, and the people spoke so fast that he could barely keep up. Mr. Parker, the kind American producer who had sponsored his trip, greeted him with a warm smile and a small Filipino flag in his hand. "Welcome to the land of dreams, Miguel," he said. Miguel smiled shyly, clutching his old microphone in his backpack. It was the only piece of home he had brought with him. They drove through the city, passing tall buildings and bright billboards. Miguel pressed his face to the window, amazed at the shining lights that reminded him of Christmas back in Manila. But beneath the wonder, nerves were building. He was here to sing, to prove himself, and the thought of performing in front of world-famous judges made his stomach twist. That night, in a small apartment arranged by Mr. Parker, Miguel called his sister Leah using a borrowed phone. Her tiny voice on the other end was full of joy. "Kuya, don't be scared. You always sing from your heart," she said. Her faith in him gave him strength. The next few days were filled with practice. Mr. Parker brought in a vocal coach to help him prepare, but Miguel struggled with stage presence and pronunciation. Sometimes, he would sit by the window, missing home, holding the little bracelet Leah had given him before he left. For luck, she had said. On the morning of the audition, Miguel woke up early. He barely ate breakfast, his nerves too tight. Dressed in a simple white shirt and jeans, he held his old microphone and whispered, "Mama, please watch me from heaven." At the studio, the line of contestants stretched around the building. There were dancers, magicians, singers, all hoping for their big break. When Miguel's turn came, he stood behind the curtain, trembling. The host gave him a thumbs up, and the stage lights turned bright. "Next contestant, Miguel Santos from the Philippines," the announcer said. The crowd clapped softly as he walked out, small and nervous under the huge spotlights. Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel sat before him, waiting. "Hello, Miguel," Simon said. "What are you going to do for us today?" "I will sing," Miguel replied in his soft accent. "A song for my sister." The music started, a slow, emotional ballad about love and hope. Miguel closed his eyes and began to sing. His voice, pure and trembling, filled the auditorium with feeling. At first, there was silence. Then, as he reached the chorus, his voice grew stronger, filled with every hardship and dream he had ever carried. The audience leaned forward, captivated. Tears glistened in a few eyes. Halfway through, his voice cracked, and he took a shaky breath. But instead of stopping, he kept singing, pouring his heart into every note. It wasn't perfect, it was real. When the final note faded, there was a heartbeat of silence. Then, the entire hall erupted in applause. People stood, cheering. Miguel blinked in disbelief, tears streaming down his face. The judges stood too, clapping with emotion. Simon leaned forward, his voice softer than usual. "Miguel, that was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever heard. You didn't just sing, you told your story." Before Miguel could respond, Simon pressed the golden buzzer. Time seemed to freeze as golden confetti rained down from above. Miguel dropped to his knees, crying. Mr. Parker rushed from backstage, hugging him tightly. The audience chanted his name while the judges smiled through tears. The boy who once sang for coins on the streets of Manila was now standing on one of the biggest stages in the world, covered in gold. As the music played and the confetti sparkled around him, Miguel looked up, whispering, "Thank you, Mama. Thank you, God." At that moment, he realized it wasn't just a dream anymore, it was destiny. Miguel's life changed overnight. After his golden buzzer moment, he became the boy everyone was talking about. News outlets across the world shared his story, and social media overflowed with clips of his performance. People called him the Filipino miracle voice, and his fanbase grew by the thousands. Mr. Parker made sure Miguel stayed grounded, reminding him that fame was fleeting but passion was forever. Despite the excitement, Miguel felt an emptiness inside. Each night, when the lights went out and the cheering stopped, he missed his sister. Leah's laughter, her hugs, and her simple words of encouragement echoed in his heart. The next round of the competition was tougher. Miguel now had to perform with live instruments and backup vocals. It was exciting, but also overwhelming. During rehearsals, he struggled to keep up with the new arrangements. He would get frustrated, his small hands clenching into fists as he fought back tears. "I can't do it," he whispered one night, sitting in a corner of the studio. Mr. Parker knelt beside him, his voice calm and gentle. "Miguel, you've already done the impossible. You don't need to be perfect, just be real." Those words stuck with him. As the semifinals approached, Miguel decided to perform a Filipino song, one his mother used to sing. It was risky, since few Americans would understand the lyrics, but Miguel wanted to honor his roots. When the night came, he stood on stage with a quiet confidence. The lights dimmed, and as the melody began, Miguel sang with deep emotion, his voice trembling yet powerful. Even without understanding the words, the audience felt the emotion. When he finished, the judges rose again to their feet. Heidi said, "I didn't understand a single word, but I felt everything." Simon nodded, smiling proudly. "You remind us why we love this show, because people like you bring heart to the stage." Miguel advanced to the finals. But with success came pressure. The world now expected something extraordinary. He spent long hours rehearsing and barely slept. Sometimes, during late-night practices, he would break down, crying quietly. He felt small again, like the boy singing under a streetlight in Manila. But one evening, a letter arrived. It was from Leah, written in her shaky handwriting. "Kuya, I miss you. Don't be sad. You sing because it makes people happy. Mama is watching." Miguel pressed the paper to his chest, tears falling freely. That letter reignited his fire. For the finals, Miguel chose to perform an original song he had written with Mr. Parker called Leah's Light. It was a tribute to his sister, a promise to never forget where he came from. The night of the finals, the theater was silent as Miguel walked onto the stage. The lights formed a soft glow around him, like a halo. He closed his eyes and began to sing. The lyrics spoke of love, loss, and the strength to keep going even when the world feels dark. Every word came from his soul. The audience sat motionless, their hearts caught in the story of the boy who once had nothing but a song. When he finished, the theater erupted with applause, louder than ever before. Simon wiped his eyes and said, "That was more than a performance. That was a message to the world, that talent can come from anywhere." The judges gave him a standing ovation, and the crowd chanted his name. When the host announced Miguel as the winner, confetti once again filled the air. Miguel stood there, overwhelmed, holding the trophy as tears rolled down his cheeks. Months later, Miguel returned to Manila. The airport was filled with people waiting to welcome him home, old friends, neighbors, and children from the same streets where he once sang. But Miguel didn't come back as a star looking for fame. He came back with a purpose. With the help of Mr. Parker and his prize money, he opened a small music school for underprivileged kids. He named it Leah's Light, after the sister who never stopped believing in him. Every day, he taught children how to sing, reminding them that dreams are born from struggle. Standing before a classroom of bright-eyed kids, Miguel smiled. He had come full circle, from the streets of Manila to the world's biggest stage, and now back home, spreading hope where it all began.